Senator Johnson, thank you so much for taking time to talk today. You have been very outspoken about your opposition to this big, beautiful bill, specifically because of how the Congressional Budget Office has scored it, saying that will add anywhere from $3.3 trillion to $4 trillion to our deficit, something that you have been outspoken for quite a bit of your career so far. But just a few hours ago, the White House actually coming out publicly saying that you personally have your facts wrong on this. What do they have wrong that you have right?
Well, first of all, let's just go back to CBO's 10-year budget outlook. And it's very difficult to project revenue. I mean, there's many influences on that and you know, different policy decisions, whether you increase taxes, decrease taxes. It's hard to score those things. What's a little bit more certain is how much we're going to spend. They're pretty good at that. So if you take a look at their 10-year projection that they issued, I think, in April of this year. No, it might have been January, whatever. The most recent projection, they're saying we'll spend about $89.3 trillion in revenue, or in total outlays over the next 10 years. We'll get about $67 billion of revenue. So that represents about a $22 trillion 10-year deficit. I just looked at average annual deficits over the last number of administrations based on 4-year terms. So President Bush, in his 8 years, averaged about $250 billion worth of deficit spending. 250. I mean, man, I wish we were there today. Obama came in, and 4 years of deficits, almost $1.3 trillion. That sparked the Tea Party. That's why I got elected. That's why I ran. Tea Party had an impact on that. So his final 4 years, the second term, he averaged deficits about $550 billion. Trump came in, had to work with Democrats, so that crept up to about $810 billion for his first 3 years. Okay, so 250, 1.3, 550, and then 810. Then COVID hit, and we had a deficit of $3.1 trillion in that year. A sane government with responsible leaders would have, after that pandemic was over, once employment returned, the economy was recovering, we would have returned to at least deficits no more than $800 billion or so, right? Didn't happen. Biden incurred deficits on average $1.9 trillion. And you look at the CBO current projection. This isn't scoring the bill or anything. This is just their current projection. It's hard to dispute. They're looking at $22 trillion of 10-year deficits. That's $2.2 trillion a year. And of course, that just ramps up, starts about 1.8 up to about $2.5 trillion. So that is the curve of our future deficits. And I would think the first goal of any Republican budget reconciliation would be to bend that deficit curve down. We're not doing that. So you can quibble. I mean, are we going to add the deficit, or are we going to sliver a little bit off of that, with those bar charts, of those bar lines, or are we going to literally turn the deficit curve down? And right now, what the House passed doesn't have any, there's no chance of them actually bending the deficit curve down.
The president and Speaker Johnson both say that the CBO scoring isn't fair because it doesn't incorporate the investments, they say, that will be put into the economy. The speaker specifically saying that this bill will be like jet fuel to the economy, and the CBO doesn't incorporate that. Do you not see the investments that way?
So again, we're arguing over the twigs and leaves and completely ignoring the forest, and it's on fire. So again, I'm trying to bring everybody back to look at the macro problem we face. And quite honestly, nobody can dispute it. I mean, the facts are facts. For the last 4 years, we've averaged deficits of $1.9 trillion, and we're not going to be reducing those. We're going to be increasing them every year. So again, you can get all wrapped around a particular score and just score this, score that. But overall, the trajectory is completely unsustainable, and nobody is addressing that. The House bill doesn't address that. In business, this would be easy. I'd go to my manager and say, listen, I told you guys you can increase your budgets based on inflation and the number of customers you serve. But you're 10% over that. Get back in line. It would literally be a 5-minute conversation, but this federal government is completely out of control, and nobody does that work. I mean, we're the same old way. We're exempting most spending. You know, did we look at 2,600 programs in the House process? Did we go line by line? No, we looked at a couple, made a few tweaks, got a CBO score. We'll argue over the CBO score. We'll make a few tweaks to our tax law and project all kinds of growth because I guess no tax on ticks is tips is really, growth incentivizing. Prove that one to me, okay? By the way, I'm all for no tax on cash tips. We can't collect it anyway, so don't even try.
Let me ask you this, because you're talking about this, business perspective that you have, and also the president has as a businessman. You spoke with him this week. Was he willing to negotiate with you? I know that you want to get to pre-pandemic levels, or was he trying to get you on board with what he's doing?
Well, so prior to this week, I met with the president twice in the White House with the Senate Finance Committee and the Senate Budget Committee. Both times I presented my pre-pandemic level options. I laid him out the variance sheets, again, very businesslike. When I presented to him and explained it to him, he said, I love this. I love this. The House will love this. Has this been presented to him? So not yet, but Mr. President, why don't we go to the House and present it?
So is he on board with you?
He was supportive of it. By the way, the only reason people like me and Mike Lee and Rick Scott voted for the revised Senate budget resolution is we felt we came away from that meeting with the president in the White House where he was committed to a pre-pandemic level spending and a process to achieve and maintain it. That's all I've asked for. I haven't laid down a specific number. I've given specific options with specific numbers, but yeah, I'm realistic. I realize we have to get the votes. But you have to first lead. You have to first lay out the goals. What's been the goal of this process other than pass one big, beautiful bill by Memorial Day? That's not a proper goal. A proper goal ought to be, okay, look at the reality. You can complain about the CBO projection, but it's somewhere in the ballpark. And what it shows is that we're going to stay at $1.5 trillion deficits as far as the eye can see, and they're going to grow. So the goal should have been, well, let's see if we can't bend this trajectory of these deficits down.
So do you feel like they have their priorities wrong in pushing this bill? Because you put out a clip on social media showing all the times that the administration has said that our biggest issue as government is spending. And now, because you project that it's not going to help with that, are they wrong by pushing this?
It starts with a tweet that President Trump, as Citizen Trump, issued in, I think, 2011. Washington has a spending problem.
What we have is a spending problem.
He wants to balance the budget. I know I do, too.
We do not have a revenue problem in the United States of America. We have a spending problem.
What is driving inflation is the growth in federal spending.
In the end, I ask, so are we willing to fix it? And I think you just take a look at what the House did. No, they're not willing to. I mean, again, $1.5 trillion of spending reduction versus $89.3 trillion. By the way, while we're increasing other spending about $300 billion. So what's that, a net savings of 1.2 versus 89.3? That's less than 1.3%. It's barely a rounding error. It's not a serious attempt at addressing that deficit issue.
Do you have other senators who are specifically on board with this issue of trying to get down to pre-pandemic levels? I know there's other ones like Hawley and Paul who have other issues, but do you have other senators like Senator Scott who are willing to dig their heels in to make sure that you get closer to pre-pandemic levels?
Again, as I stated on one show, that I'm pretty confident there are enough of us that will stop this until
do you have a number?
There are some that are quietly supportive and some that are more vocal. Okay, but again, I want to see the president succeed. I'm a big supporter of President Trump, and so the phone call we had yesterday was very cordial. Now, I truly believe he also wants to reduce spending. It's hard. We've got big spenders in our party. We've got slim majorities in both bodies. Okay, so this is not easy. I'm not saying it is. What I have been arguing is we have never had a process to control spending. So the only process I can think of that would work is what Doe showed us. Do forensic audits, go contract by contract, line by line, expose the grotesque levels of waste, fraud, and abuse. And again, when you've gone from $4.4 trillion to $7 trillion in 6 years, I have to believe if you go through and do what we've never done before, forensically audit every line of spending, all these programs, there will literally be hundreds of billions of dollars that you can eliminate and nobody will even know except for the grifters who are sucking down the waste, fraud, and abuse.
We're talking about a lot of time here to go through all this line by line.
Which we can't do it in one step. That's been my point. Thune was right. This should have been a two-step process all the time. Extend current tax law, take an automatic tax increase off the table, bring that certainty to the economy, border, defense, pocket what savings we can. In the Senate's first resolution, we're going to pocket $850 billion. Those would have been real savings. And those would have been in the first 4 years as we were spending $300 billion on defense. And so that's the way we should have done it. Didn't choose that, so now we're here. But the only way we get what I want to get is we're going to have two bites of the apple here. We're going to have another budget reconciliation with a lot of pressure on us to actually force people to look at spending. I want to work with the president. You know, he's indicating he wants to work with me. I had a real good conversation with Kevin Haslett last night. I'm sure he'll talk to Scott Bessent. Again, we'll compare numbers. I know the numbers backwards and forwards. You know, trust me, I know that. I don't think anybody knows them better than I, other than maybe the president's economic team.
Senator Ron Johnson, really appreciate your time. Thank you for going through some of this with us, especially this is such a hot topic this week and in the coming weeks in Washington, D.C., so really appreciate your time, sir.
Coming.